I'm Kara Sterling, 27, and I built a seven-figure consulting firm after my parents disowned me for choosing my career over their arranged plans. I stand in the middle of Grandma Rose's parlor, and the air feels thick enough to choke me. It smells like dried lavender, lemon polish, and the heavy, suffocating scent of old money. Sunlight cuts through the gaps in the floor to ceiling velvet drapes, illuminating millions of dust motes dancing in the stillness. I am clutching a legal document so tightly that the edges are beginning to wilt against my damp palms. My heart hammers against my ribs like a trapped bird desperate for the sky. I look across the massive mahogany desk at Mr. Henderson. He is the family lawyer, a man who has seen three generations of Sterlings rise and fall. He looks at me over the rim of his spectacles, his expression unreadable. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticks with a deafening rhythm. Each second feels like a hammer blow. "Is there a problem, Kara?" Mr. Henderson asks. His voice is like dry parchment. "No," I whisper. I clear my throat and find my professional voice, the one I use to close deals that make grown men tremble. "Please finish reading." He clears his throat, a sharp, grating sound in the silent room. He looks down at the final page of the will. I can see the ink through the back of the paper. It looks like a jagged scar. "To my granddaughter, Kara Sterling," he begins, his voice gaining a sudden formal weight. "For the courage she showed when the world turned its back and for the strength she found in the silence of her own ambition. I leave the entirety of my liquid assets totaling $1,900,000. The number hits me like a physical blow. I stumble back an inch, my heel catching on the thick Persian rug. 1.9 million. It's a fortune. It's more than my parents' entire net worth combined after their recent investments turned sour. My skin begins to prickle. A strange, cold heat starts in my toes and rushes up to my chest. "Furthermore," Mr. Henderson continues, ignoring my shock, "I leave the full ownership of the Sterling estate, including this house and the surrounding 60 acres, to Kara. It is my express wish that she do with it as she sees fit, without interference from any other living relative." The room seems to tilt. I reach out and steady myself on the back of a velvet armchair. I am now more powerful than the people who threw me away. I am the owner of the very roof they are currently trying to hide under. I remember the day they kicked me out. It was raining, a cliché, but true. My father had stood on the porch of their townhouse, his face purple with rage. He had called me a disgraceful, selfish girl, because I refused to marry the son of his business partner to bail him out of a debt. My mother had stood behind him, silent, her eyes cold as stones. They hadn't checked on me once in 5 years. Not when I was sleeping on a floor, not when I landed my first contract, not even when Grandma Rose got sick. Now I hold the keys to their kingdom. I look at the legal document again. The words 1,900,000 seem to glow on the page. I realize I'm breathing heavily, my chest heaving as the reality sinks in. I'm not just Kara the outcast anymore. I'm Kara the beneficiary. A sudden, sharp vibration in my pocket makes me jump. I pull out my phone. The caller ID makes my blood run cold then boil. "Dad, I haven't heard from him in 3 years. He didn't even call when Grandma died last week. He sent a formal text about the family's shared grief." I know why he's calling now. The vultures have been circling the estate for days, waiting for the reading. They think they're the rightful heirs. They think they're moving back into the big house to restore their status. I let the phone ring. I watch the screen light up, then go dark, then it starts again. He's desperate. I look at Mr. Henderson. "They're outside, aren't they?" The lawyer sighs and glances toward the window. "Their car pulled into the drive 10 minutes ago. I believe they are under the impression that the house was left to them in a separate trust. A slow, sharp smile spreads across my face. It's not a kind smile. It's the smile of a woman who has spent 5 years learning how to win. I feel a surge of adrenaline that makes my fingertips tingle. They're in for a very expensive surprise, I say. My voice is steady now. It's cold. I walk over to the window and pull back the heavy velvet curtain just a few inches. Down at the bottom of the stone steps, I see my father's black sedan. He's standing by the hood, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the window, looking smug. My mother is checking her lipstick in the passenger mirror. They look like they're preparing to take a throne. They have no idea that I own the chair they're planning to sit in. They have no idea that every cent of the sterling fortune is now sitting in my accounts. I turn back to the lawyer. Mr. Henderson, I want the locks changed. By tonight. Of course, Kara, he says, and I think I see a glint of approval in his eyes. I tuck the legal documents into my leather briefcase. I can feel the weight of the inheritance. It's heavy, but for the first time in my life, it's not a burden. It's a weapon. I head toward the parlor door. I can hear their voices in the foyer now. They're loud. They're entitled. They're already talking about which rooms they're going to renovate. I take a deep breath, smoothing my blazer. My heart has stopped hammering. It's beating with a slow, lethal precision. I reach for the door handles, the cool brass feeling like an invitation. The lesson is about to begin. I'm Kara Sterling, 27, and I built a 7-figure consulting firm from the ashes of the life my parents burned to the ground. The rain is a gray, relentless sheet against the glass of the limousine. I sit in the back, the leather cool and smelling of expensive chemicals, clutching the black edges of my coat. I watch the droplets race down the window, distorting the world outside into a blurred, weeping mess. We are pulling up to the cemetery gates. The reality of the morning is settling in my marrow like ice. Through the streaked glass I see them. My breath hitches. My stomach drops, a heavy, cold stone plummeting into an abyss. There stands Beatrice, my mother. She is draped in a black lace veil that cascades over her shoulders with a dramatic flair I know she can't afford. It's a designer piece, stiff and pretentious, a costume for a grief she doesn't feel. Beside her, Marcus, my father, is adjusting his cufflink before flicking his wrist to check his watch. He looks bored. He looks like he's waiting for a business meeting to start, not for his mother to be lowered into the earth. It's been 7 years. 7 years since the night the rain looked exactly like this. I can still see the image of my suitcases hitting the wet pavement. I can still feel the humiliation burning in my throat. My own father told me I was dead to them because I wouldn't let him sell my future to cover his gambling debts. They chose their greed over me. As the limo slows to a crawl near the gravesite, their heads snap toward the car. They don't see a daughter, they see a vault. Beatrice's face shifts instantly. Her cold mask breaks into a twisted grimace of practiced sorrow. Her eyes, usually as sharp and dry as glass, go watery on cue. Marcus steps forward. His hand is already outstretched as if he's ready to reclaim a lost piece of property. I feel my pulse thrumming in my ears. It is a rhythmic drumming that drowns out the sound of the rain. They are rushing toward the car now. They aren't waiting for the driver to open the door. They are desperate. I see my father's lips move, calling my name through the glass. His face is pressed too close. He looks frantic. They know. The news of Grandma Rose's will has traveled faster than the funeral procession. They've heard about the $1.9 million. They've heard about the estate. The parents who haven't sent a single text in nearly a decade are suddenly here to play the role of the grieving, supportive family. I feel a surge of bile rise in my throat. It is followed by a terrifying, crystalline clarity. My skin prickles with a sudden electric heat. They think they can walk back into my life because my bank account has grown. They think they're moving into the mansion I now own. The driver kills the engine. The silence in the car is deafening. Outside, my mother reaches for the door handle. Her fingers, tipped with a fresh, expensive manicure, claw at the metal. She looks through the window at me, her expression a grotesque mimicry of maternal love. I don't move. I don't reach for the lock. I sit in the shadows of the tinted glass and watch the vultures descend. They have no idea that I've already signed the papers to change every lock on that property. They have no idea that the girl they threw away died on that curb 7 years ago. I take a slow, deep breath. I can smell my own perfume, sharp, expensive, and cold. I reach for my phone and send a single text to my head of security. They're here. Don't let them pass the gates of the house. I look back at the window. My father is tapping on the glass now. He's smiling, a thin, oily smile that makes my skin crawl. He thinks he's won. He thinks he's about to be rich again. I feel a slow, lethal calm wash over me. I finally reach for the door handle. The lesson is about to begin, and I am going to make sure it's one they never forget. I'm Kara Sterling, 27, and I built a 7-figure consulting firm from the ashes of the life my parents burned to the ground. The gates of the Sterling estate swing open with a low, mechanical groan. I am driving myself today. I need to feel the vibration of the engine under my palms. I need to feel in control of every inch of my movement. As I round the final bend of the long, gravel driveway, my heart doesn't just skip, it stops. A massive, dented moving truck is parked directly on the manicured lawn. The heavy tires have dug deep, ugly ruts into the grass Grandma Rose spent 40 years perfecting. My grip on the steering wheel tightens until the leather groans. My knuckles are white, skeletal against the black interior of my car. I kill the engine. The silence that follows is sudden and sharp, broken only by the rhythmic tick-tick-tick of the cooling metal. I can feel my pulse thrumming in my ears. It is a frantic, heavy beat that makes the edges of my vision blur. I step out of the car. The air is thick with the smell of diesel fumes and damp earth. There she is. My mother Beatrice is standing on the stone portico. She isn't wearing the funeral black anymore. She's in a crisp, white linen suit that screams, Lady of the Manor. She's holding a clipboard, pointing toward the open front doors with the authority of a general. Two burly men in stained t-shirts are struggling with a sofa. It is a hideous, overstuffed floral monstrosity. It's the same sofa from their old townhouse, the one I used to hide behind when their creditors came knocking. It smells like mothballs and desperation even from 20 yards away. They are dragging it across the threshold of the grand foyer. I walk toward them. My heels click against the stone steps with the precision of a firing squad. Each step feels like I'm reclaiming a piece of myself. Careful with the molding, Beatrice shrieks at the movers. She doesn't see me yet. She's too busy inspecting the gold leaf on the doorframe. That's original 1920s work. We can't have it scuffed before the housewarming party. Housewarming party. The words hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. Beatrice. My voice is low. It is cold. It cuts through her frantic energy like a blade. She spins around. For a split second I see it, a flash of pure, unadulterated terror in her eyes. It's gone in a heartbeat, replaced by a mask of saccharine sweetness. She beams at me, her lips stretching wide to show teeth that look far too white. "Kara, darling, you're finally here," she cries out. She moves toward me, her arms outstretched as if she expects a hug. I stay perfectly still. Her arms drop awkwardly to her sides. "We decided to get a head start," There is just so much to do, isn't there? What is that truck doing in my driveway? I ask. I don't move. I am a statue of ice in the humid afternoon air. Beatrice chuckles, a light, airy sound that makes my skin crawl. She reaches out to pat my arm, but I step back. Her hand hangs in the air for a second before she tucks it behind her back. Oh, don't be silly, dear. We've discussed this, she says, her tone shifting into that condescending lilt she used when I was 10. This house is massive. It's a burden, Kara, a girl your age with your little business. You can't possibly manage 60 acres and a 30-room estate on your own. It's far too much responsibility. She turns back to the movers. Put the sofa in the morning room and tell Marcus to start unloading the crates for the master suite. Marcus, my father. I look past her into the grand foyer. The air inside the house feels different now. It's heavy. It's suffocating. It smells like the people who threw me out in the rain 7 years ago. I see him. My father is standing in the library, Grandma's sanctuary. He has already opened the mahogany liquor cabinet. He is holding a crystal tumbler of her 20-year-old scotch. He raises the glass to me, a smug, oily grin spreading across his face. He looks like a king who has just reclaimed his throne. We've decided to move in to help you manage the estate, Beatrice continues, her voice humming with a terrifying sense of entitlement. We'll take the west wing, of course. It's better for your father's back. You can keep your little bedroom upstairs. We're a family again, Kara. Isn't it wonderful? My stomach turns. A wave of nausea washes over me, followed by a surge of white-hot adrenaline. My fingertips are tingling. I can feel the weight of the legal documents in my bag, the papers that prove I own every single floorboard they are currently standing on. They aren't just visiting, they are reclaiming. They are marking their territory with their hideous furniture and their stolen scotch. They think I'm the same broken girl they left on the curb. I look at the floral sofa. It's sitting in the center of the foyer now, a jagged scar on the elegance of the room. One of the movers is wiping sweat from his forehead, leaning against a marble pillar. Stop, I say. It's not a loud word, but it carries. The movers freeze. My father stops mid-sip, his eyes narrowing. Beatrice blinks. Excuse me? I said stop, I repeat. I walk past her, stepping into the foyer. I feel the house around me, the history of it, the memory of Grandma Rose's kindness. This place was my only refuge. Now they are turning it into a tomb. Kara, don't be difficult, my father calls out from the library. He walks toward us, the ice clinking in his glass. We're doing you a favor. You have no idea what the taxes on a place like this look like. You need us. I turn to look at him. I see the greed in the lines around his eyes. I see the way he looks at the paintings on the walls, not as art, but as price tags. You have 5 minutes, I say. My voice is steady. It is the voice I use when I'm closing a multi-million-dollar deal. It is the voice of a woman who knows exactly what she is worth. Beatrice laughs, a sharp, nervous sound. 5 minutes for what, darling? I look her dead in the eye. I let the silence stretch between us until she starts to fidget with her clipboard. 5 minutes to get that truck off my lawn, I say. And 5 minutes to get that garbage out of my house. The air in the room suddenly feels very cold. The entitlement on their faces begins to crack, revealing the desperation underneath. They think they've moved in. They have no idea that I've already called the locksmith, and I've already called the police. I'm Kara Sterling, 27, and I built a 7-figure consulting firm from the ashes of the life my parents burned to the ground. I stand in the doorway of the formal dining room, my shadow stretching long and dark across the Persian rug. The air in here is different. It's thick with the scent of roasted rosemary chicken and the expensive, peaty aroma of the scotch my father is still clutching. They didn't leave. They didn't even hesitate. While I was in the foyer trying to process the sheer scale of their audacity, they moved into the heart of the house. They are sitting at the 20-foot mahogany table. My mother Beatrice has set the table with Grandma Rose's finest Limoges china, the white porcelain with the delicate gold rim that was only ever used for Christmas and the rarest of celebrations. She is currently spooning potatoes onto a plate, her movements fluid and practiced, as if she hasn't been absent from this house for nearly a decade. She looks up and sees me, and her smile is a jagged glass shard. "There you are, Kara," she says, her voice smooth as silk. "We found some things in the pantry." "Sit down, darling. You look peaked. You always were such a thin, fragile thing when you didn't eat." My stomach does a slow, sickening roll. I feel the familiar heat of a panic attack threatening to bloom in my chest, but I crush it down. I am not that girl anymore. I am the woman who saved this estate from the tax lien my parents' negligence nearly incurred years ago. I am the woman who stayed by Grandma's side while she withered away, holding her hand when she couldn't remember her own name. I walk toward the table. My heels are silent on the rug, but the silence I carry with me is louder. I don't go to the chair Beatrice has pulled out for me. I walk to the head of the table, Grandma's chair. I place my hand on the high, carved back of the wood. It feels warm, as if it's still holding onto her spirit. My father, Marcus, doesn't look up from his plate. He's cutting into the chicken with a silver knife, the metal screeching against the fine china. The sound sets my teeth on edge. He looks comfortable. He looks like a man who has finally come home to the wealth he thinks he deserves by birthright. "This house always did have the best acoustics," he says between bites. "We'll need to update the sound system in the library, though, and the cellar is looking a bit thin. I'll make a list of what we need to restock." "You aren't making any lists, Marcus," I say. My voice is a low, vibrating hum. He finally looks up, his eyes bloodshot and narrowed. He lets the knife clatter onto the plate. The sound is a violent intrusion in the quiet room. "Enough with the attitude, Kara," he snaps. "We've let you have your little moment. We've let you play the grieving granddaughter. But the adults are here now. We're going to get this place back on its feet. We're going to restore the sterling name." "With what money?" I ask. I can feel the weight of the leather-bound legal folder in my left hand. It feels heavy, like a loaded gun. "The money you gambled away." "The money you stole from my college fund? Or the money you're hoping to squeeze out of this house?" Beatrice sighs, a long, theatrical sound. "Kara, don't be vulgar. We are family. This is our legacy. Rose would have wanted us here. She was a mother, after all. She knew that family comes first." "Family didn't come first when you changed your phone numbers and moved to Florida while I was working 3 jobs to pay for her hospice care," I say. My voice is shaking now, not with fear, but with a rage so cold it feels like liquid nitrogen in my veins. "Family didn't come first when you ignored every single one of my emails telling you she was dying." I step forward, moving into the light of the crystal chandelier. I lift the folder. I don't hand it to them. I drop it. The slap of the heavy paper hitting the mahogany table is a literal explosion. It's a sharp, violent crack that makes Beatrice jump, her fork slipping from her fingers and hitting the floor with a dull thud. The sound echoes off the high ceilings, ringing in the sudden, suffocating silence. Marcus stares at the folder. He doesn't move for a long time. Then his hand, thick-fingered and slightly trembling, reaches out. He flips the cover open. I watch his face. It is a cinematic transformation. The smug, oily satisfaction drains out of his skin, replaced by a sickly, ashen gray. His eyes move rapidly across the lines of the deed. He reaches the section with the notary's stamp. He reaches the section where my name is listed as the sole, irrevocable beneficiary of the Sterling Trust. "What is this?" he whispers. His voice has lost its gravelly edge. It sounds thin, reedy. "It's the deed of truth, Marcus," I say. I lean in, placing both hands on the table, looming over him. I can see the pores on his face, the way his sweat is beginning to bead at his hairline. "It's the legal confirmation that Grandma Rose left every square inch of this property, every cent in her accounts, and every piece of furniture you're currently sitting on to me. Alone." "This can't be right," Beatrice stammers, leaning over to look at the papers. Her face is contorted, her lady of the manor mask slipping to reveal the predator underneath. "She couldn't do that. We're her children. It's illegal to disinherit your only children." "Actually, it's quite easy when your children haven't spoken to you in 7 years," I say. Marcus suddenly slams his fist onto the table. The china rattles. A wine glass tips over, the red liquid bleeding across the white lace tablecloth like an open wound. "She was senile," he roars, his face turning a dark, dangerous purple. "She was out of her mind when she signed this. You manipulated her, Kara. You crawled into her ear while she was weak and convinced her to cut us out. We'll take this to court. We'll have this thrown out in a week. She didn't know what she was doing." I don't flinch, I don't even blink. I lean in closer until I can smell the scotch on his breath. My voice drops to a low, dangerous whisper that carries more weight than his scream. "She knew exactly what she was doing, Dad," I say, the word dad tasting like poison in my mouth. "I have the medical evaluations. I have the video of her signing these papers with 3 independent witnesses and a court-appointed advocate. She wasn't senile. She was finally, for the first time in her life, protected from you." I look from him to Beatrice. She is clutching the edge of the table so hard her knuckles look like white stones. "Every square inch of this property belongs to me," I say, my words clipped and final. "The air you're breathing right now, it belongs to me. That chair, mine. The food in your mouth, bought with my money. You aren't moving into the West Wing. You aren't moving into the pool house. You aren't even staying for dessert." I stand up straight, smoothing the front of my blazer. The lethal calm has fully taken over. I feel powerful. I feel like the architect of my own destiny, and for the first time in my life, I am the one holding the door open. "The locksmith is at the gate," I say, checking my watch. "And the sheriff's deputy is right behind him. You have 4 minutes left. I suggest you start packing that hideous sofa back into the truck before I have it hauled to the dump." I'm Kara Sterling, 27, and I built a 7-figure consulting firm from the ashes of the life my parents burned to the ground. Beatrice lets out a sound that isn't human. It starts as a low, guttural vibration in her throat and ascends into a jagged, high-pitched wail. It is the sound of a woman watching a $1 million lottery ticket dissolve in a vat of acid. The noise pierces the quiet of the dining room, vibrating against the crystal prisms of the chandelier above us. It sets my teeth on edge, a physical ache that starts in my jaw and radiates down my spine. She collapses back into her chair, her hands flying to her face, but she doesn't cover her eyes. She peers through her fingers, checking to see if her performance is landing. "How could you?" she shrieks, her voice cracking with practiced desperation. "After everything we did for you, Kara. After the sacrifices we made." I stand perfectly still, my hands resting on the back of Grandma Rose's chair. The wood is cool and solid, the only thing keeping me anchored in this room of ghosts. "What sacrifices, Beatrice?" I ask. My voice is a flat line, a surgical blade in the air. "The private schools," she cries, her chest heaving as she leans toward me. "The tuition, the elite tutors we paid for when you were struggling with calculus. We poured our lives into making sure you had a future. We gave you the sterling name, a name that opened doors you couldn't have cracked on your own. She reaches across the mahogany table. Her hand moves like a pale, seeking spider. Before I can recoil, her fingers latch onto my wrist. They are ice cold. They feel like damp marble, heavy and suffocating. She squeezes, her nails digging slightly into my skin, a desperate attempt to anchor me to her narrative. We had an unfortunate falling out, yes, she whispers, her eyes brimming with forced cinematic tears. Tempers flared. Mistakes were made on both sides, but we are your parents. We are the architects of your success. You wouldn't be standing here in this house in that suit if it weren't for the foundation we built for you. I look down at her hand. I don't see a mother's touch. I see the shackles she tried to lock me in years ago. I jerk my arm back with a violence that surprises both of us. The movement is sharp and final. Don't touch me, I say. The words are cold enough to frost the windows. You want to talk about foundations? I lean over the table, my face inches from hers. Let's talk about the foundation of the night I turned 19. Do you remember that foundation, Beatrice? It was the asphalt of the driveway. I can feel my heart hammering against my ribs, a trapped bird wanting out. I came home from my double shift at the diner, I say. I had $60 in my pocket and a hole in my shoe. I tried my key in the lock. It didn't turn. You hadn't just changed the locks, you had bolted the door from the inside. I see her eyes flicker. She remembers. I pounded on that door for an hour. I continue, my voice dropping to a dangerous, vibrating hum. It was November. It was raining. I saw your shadow in the hallway, Beatrice. I saw you stand there and watch me through the glass. You didn't open the door because I hadn't given you my entire paycheck to cover your club fees. You let me sleep in my car. I close my eyes for a split second and I'm back there. I can feel the biting chill of the steering wheel. I can feel the way my breath fogged up the glass until I couldn't see the house anymore. I spent that night shivering under a thin gym towel, watching the lights go out in your bedroom one by one. You slept in Egyptian cot while I wondered if the police would tow me away for vagrancy on my own parents' street. That was your sacrifice, I say, opening my eyes. You sacrificed your daughter for $60 and a point of pride. The room seems to grow colder. The air is thin, stripped of its oxygen. I watch the mask of parental love begin to crumble. It doesn't fall off all at once. It peels away in ugly, jagged strips. The grief in Beatrice's eyes hardens into something metallic. The wailing stops instantly. The silence that follows is even more terrifying than the screaming. She sits up straight, smoothing her silk blouse with a sharp, rhythmic motion. The mother is gone. The predator has arrived. You ungrateful little bitch, she says. The words are quiet, but they carry the weight of a lead pipe. You think you're so smart because you have a few million and a piece of paper? You think you can just erase us? We are the Sterlings. This house is ours by right of blood. Rose was a senile old woman who didn't know what she was doing. You manipulated her. You crawled into her bed and whispered lies about us until she broke. Marcus finally speaks, his voice a low growl that matches the darkness in the room. We aren't leaving, Kara, he says. He picks up his wine glass and takes a slow, deliberate sip, staring at me over the rim. This is our house. We've already moved the furniture. We've already set the table. If you want us out, you'll have to have us dragged out in front of the neighbors. Think about the headlines. Local CEO evicts homeless parents from family estate. Your reputation won't survive the week. I look at them both. I see the greed shimmering in their eyes like oil on water. They don't love this house. They don't love Grandma Rose. They love the $1,900,000. They love the status. They love the idea of me being under their thumb again. I feel a strange sense of peace wash over me. The fear I've carried for a decade, the fear of their rejection, the fear of their power simply evaporates. They aren't giants. They are small, hollow people clinging to a dream that ended the moment Grandma Rose signed that deed. You're right about one thing, Marcus, I say, a slow smile spreading across my face. I reach into my pocket and pull out my phone. There will be headlines, but they won't be about me. I tap a button on the screen. Outside in the distance, I hear the first faint chirp of a siren. It's getting closer. The sheriff is already at the gate, I say. And I've already authorized the local news crew to film the trespasser removal from the public sidewalk. If you want to talk about reputation, I suggest you start moving very, very fast. Beatrice's face goes ashen. The greed is still there, but now it's mixed with a pure, blinding terror. I stand my ground, the master of my own house, watching the shadows of the blue and red lights begin to dance against the dining room walls. I'm Kara Sterling, 27, and I'm the woman who transformed a locked-out childhood into a seven-figure consulting empire while my parents were busy planning how to spend my inheritance. I turn my back on them and walk into the kitchen. The silence in the dining room is heavy, a thick, suffocating blanket of stunned disbelief. My heels click against the white marble floor. It is a sharp, rhythmic sound. It sounds like a gavel hitting a bench. I reach the kitchen island, a massive slab of charcoal-veined stone that Grandma Rose used for kneading bread. I see the digital kitchen timer sitting by the stove. It is a small, sleek device with a magnet on the back. I pick it up. The plastic is cool and smooth in my palm. I press the buttons with a deliberate, slow motion. Click, click, click. I set the display to 24:00:00. I place the timer in the dead center of the island. I press the start button. The first second vanishes. 23:59:59. The red LED numbers glow with a fierce artificial light. They reflect off the polished surface of the stone like a digital blood stain. I hear Marcus's footsteps behind me. They are heavy and arrogant. He still thinks he owns the ground he walks on. I don't turn around. I keep my eyes fixed on those ticking red numbers. "What is this, Kara?" Marcus asks. His voice is right behind my ear. I can smell the expensive scotch on his breath. It's a smell that used to make my stomach flip with fear. Now it just smells like decay. "It's your life, Marcus," I say. I turn slowly to face him. He is leaning against the counter, trying to look relaxed. His arms are crossed over his chest, but I see the way his fingers are twitching against his sleeves. "You have 24 hours to get your things out of my house," I say. I point a single finger at the timer. 23:59:30. "When that hits 0, the locks will be changed again," I continue. "Any property left inside will be considered abandoned and hauled to the city dump." I feel a surge of adrenaline. It's a hot, electric wire running through my veins. "I've already alerted the sheriff's office," I say. "They have a copy of the deed. They have a copy of the restraining order I filed an hour ago." Beatrice appears in the doorway. She looks like a ghost in her pale silk blouse. Her face is a mask of high society outrage. "A restraining order?" she whispers. Her voice is thin and reedy. "Against your own mother, you would humiliate us like that?" I look her straight in the eye. I don't feel the old urge to look away. "I'm not humiliating you, Beatrice," I say. "You did that to yourselves when you tried to break into a dead woman's house before her body was even cold." Marcus lets out a sound. It's a laugh, but it's hollow. It's the sound of a man who is terrified but too proud to admit he's lost the map. "You don't have the guts," he says. He steps closer, trying to use his height to crowd me. He smells like old money and desperation. You're a sterling, he sneers. You care about what people think. You care about the name. You won't throw your own flesh and blood onto the street in front of the neighbors. He looks at the timer and scoffs. This is a tantrum, Kara, a pathetic little display of power because you finally got a taste of Rose's money. I feel my jaw tight. My teeth ache from the pressure. It's not a tantrum, Marcus, I say. My voice is a low, dangerous hum. It's an eviction. I lean forward, closing the gap between us. I want him to see the lack of mercy in my eyes. I spent years begging for your scrap of approval, I say. I worked 3 jobs to pay for the degree you promised to fund and then revoked when I wouldn't marry the son of your business partner. I can feel my heart hammering against my ribs. It's not fear, it's the rhythm of a war drum. I slept in my car while you hosted charity galas in this very house, I say. You think I care about the neighbors? I want the neighbors to see. I want them to see you carrying your designer suitcases down the driveway like common trespassers. The red numbers on the timer tick down. 23:58:12. The silence that follows is deafening. I can hear the hum of the refrigerator. I can hear the wind rattling the window pane. Marcus's face begins to change. The smugness is being eaten away by a cold, hard reality. He looks at the timer, then back at me. He sees that I'm not blinking. He sees that the girl he used to break is gone. You're serious, he says. The words are barely a whisper. I've never been more serious in my life, I reply. I step around him, heading toward the back door. I stop at the threshold and look back over my shoulder. They look small in the middle of that grand kitchen. They look like 2 people who have realized they are standing on a sinking ship. The clock is ticking, Dad, I say. The word dad is a bitter irony. I suggest you start with the master bedroom. It's a lot of furniture to move in a single day. I walk out onto the patio. The night air is crisp and sharp. It tastes like freedom. Behind me in the kitchen, the red numbers continue their relentless march towards 0. I can feel the power of the house around me. It's mine, every brick, every memory, every scent. I look up at the stars, and for the first time in 10 years, I don't feel like I'm looking for a way home. I am home. And the people who made me feel homeless are finally on the outside looking in. I hear a crash from inside the kitchen. It sounds like a glass breaking. Marcus is losing his temper. I smile into the darkness. Let him break the glass. I'll just deduct it from the bill I'm sending his lawyer. I stand there listening to the sirens in the distance. They are coming for them. The law is coming. The truth is coming, and I'm the one who called it in. I take a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs. I am Kara Sterling, and I am done being a victim. I check my watch. 23 hours and 57 minutes left. The countdown to my new life has officially begun. I'm Larkin Vance, 29, and I've spent my entire adult life building a fortress of financial independence while my parents treated me like a forgotten line item on a balance sheet they couldn't balance. I pulled my car into the long, winding driveway of Grandma Rose's estate, my hands trembling slightly against the leather steering wheel. I expected to see moving trucks. I expected to see boxes piled high on the porch. I expected the somber silence of a defeat. Instead, I saw a fleet of luxury SUVs, Porsches, Mercedes, and Range Rovers, clogging the gravel path like a row of shiny, metallic parasites. The house was glowing. Every light in the mansion was turned on, casting a defiant, golden glare into the evening mist. I could hear the music before I even turned off the engine. It was upbeat, brassy jazz, the kind of music Marcus and Beatrice always played when they wanted to project the image of a life well lived. My chest tightened. My heart felt like a trapped bird beating against my ribs. I stepped out of the car, the cool air hitting my face, but it didn't soothe the fire starting to burn in my gut. I walked up the stone steps. I didn't use my key. I pushed the front door open and the sound of the party hit me like a physical blow. The foyer was filled with the scent of expensive catering, truffle oil, seared scallops, and the sharp, acidic bite of vintage champagne. I stood in the doorway, my work bag still slung over my shoulder, looking like a stranger in my own home. Larkin, darling, you're late to your own homecoming. It was Mrs. Gable. She was a woman who spent more on her facelifts than most people spent on their mortgages. She swirled a crystal flute of amber liquid and blew me a kiss from across the room. She didn't wait for an answer. She turned back to a group of men in tailored blazers, laughing at something Marcus was saying. My parents were in the center of the living room. They were the suns around which this shallow solar system orbited. Marcus looked rejuvenated. The gray in his hair seemed less like a sign of aging and more like a badge of distinguished wealth. Beatrice was draped in a silk wrap I recognized immediately. It was Grandma's. The delicate, hand-painted fabric looked wrong on her shoulders. It looked stolen. "There she is," Marcus called out, his voice booming with a false, jovial warmth. He raised his glass to me. "The woman of the hour. We were just telling the Hendersons about the new foundation we're setting up. The Sterling Vance Legacy Fund. It's going to be the talk of the charity circuit this fall." He wasn't just staying. He was rebranding. He was using the $1,900,000, my $1,900,000, to buy his way back into the only world he ever cared about. He had invited their former country club friends over to witness their resurrection. He had built a social fortress inside these walls. He knew that if he surrounded himself with the town's elite, I couldn't just call the police and have him dragged out. I'd be social suicide. I'd be the ungrateful daughter who ruined the most exclusive party of the season. I felt a sickening wave of nausea. I looked at the faces in the room. I saw the greed masked by Botox and expensive jewelry. They all thought they were celebrating a family reunion. They thought the money was back where it belonged. Then I saw him. A man I didn't recognize, one of Marcus's old business cronies, staggered slightly near the fireplace. He was holding a glass of heavy, dark Cabernet. He laughed a deep, wet laugh and gestured wildly with his arm. The glass tilted. A thick, jagged splash of deep red wine hit the center of the rug. It wasn't just any rug. It was Grandma Rose's Persian silk runner, a 1920s masterpiece she had carried with her through 3 different moves. It was her prized possession. The cream-colored silk soaked up the wine like a wound opening up. "Oops," the man chuckled, barely glancing down. "A little spill for the spirits, eh, Marcus?" Marcus didn't even flinch. He just patted the man on the shoulder. "Don't worry about it, Arthur. We'll have the staff deep clean it tomorrow, or we'll just replace it. It's a bit dated anyway, don't you think?" The world went silent. The music seemed to fade into a dull, distant hum. I stared at the red stain. It looked like blood. It looked like they were bleeding Grandma's memory dry right in front of me. They were treating her life, her treasures, and my inheritance like disposable props in their play. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a glass. I didn't even address my parents. I felt a cold, crystalline clarity settle over me. The heat in my blood turned to ice. They thought they had won because they had an audience. They thought their status was a shield. They forgot that I didn't build my empire by following their rules. I built it by knowing exactly when to cut a losing investment. I turned on my heel and walked back toward the mudroom. My movements were slow, deliberate, and silent. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My thumb hovered over a contact I had added to my phone only 4 hours ago, a just-in-case measure that I now realized was a necessity. I stepped into the quiet of the pantry and pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice. Vance speaking, a gruff, professional voice answered. "It's Larkin," I said. My voice was a low, steady whisper that didn't shake. "The social event I mentioned is currently in progress. There are approximately 30 trespassers on the property, including the two primary targets. They are currently damaging the internal assets." "Are you safe, ma'am?" the voice asked. "I'm fine," I said, looking through the cracked door at my mother, who was currently laughing while she used Grandma's antique silver spoon to serve caviar. "But I want the full spectrum service. I want the gates locked from the outside. I want the power cut, and I want the specialized removal team here in 10 minutes. No sirens, just results." "Understood," the voice replied. "We're 2 minutes out. Stay in a secure area." I hung up. I leaned my head against the cool wood of the pantry door and closed my eyes. I could hear the pop of another champagne cork in the living room. I could hear the clink of crystal. They thought they had created a fortress. They didn't realize they had just walked into a trap. I reached up and clicked the lock on the pantry door from the inside. The countdown hadn't just reached 0. It had just exploded. I'm Larkin Vance, 29, and I've spent my entire adult life building a fortress of financial independence, while my parents treated me like a forgotten line item on a balance sheet they couldn't balance. I am standing in the absolute, suffocating darkness of the butler's pantry. The power went out 3 minutes ago. I cut it myself from the main breaker in the basement. I hear the music die with a pathetic, distorted moan. I hear the collective gasp of 50 people who have never known a moment of genuine inconvenience. I hear my father's voice, sharp and serrated, barking orders at a catering staff that has already fled the property. I wait. My heart is a frantic drum in my chest, but my hands are steady. Then, it happens. The darkness outside the frosted glass of the pantry door isn't just dark anymore. It's being sliced open. Blue, red, blue, red. The rhythmic, aggressive pulse of police strobes hits the kitchen wallpaper, turning the floral patterns into a strobe-lit nightmare. I unlock the pantry door. I walk through the shadows of the kitchen, past the half-eaten plates of lobster and the open bottles of champagne that I paid for. I reach the front foyer just as the heavy brass knocker sounds. 3 rhythmic, authoritative strikes. It sounds like a judge's gavel. I open the door. The night air rushes in, smelling of damp earth and ozone. Officer Miller stands there, his silhouette framed by the swirling lights of 3 squad cars. He is a mountain of a man in a dark navy uniform. His eyes are professional, detached, and utterly unimpressed by the architecture of the mansion. "Everything is exactly as I described on the phone," I tell him. My voice is a low, steady hum. It doesn't shake. I turn and walk back into the center of the foyer, Miller's heavy tactical boots echoing behind me like a countdown. The living room is a sea of pale, confused faces. The guests are huddled together, holding up their cell phones like glowing talismans to ward off the dark. They look like ghosts caught in a net. Marcus is standing by the fireplace, his face flushed a deep, ugly purple. He sees me. Then he sees the badge. "Larkin, what is this nonsense?" Marcus demands. He tries to reclaim his booming, patriarch voice, but it cracks at the edges. "There's been a surge. The grid is down. Tell these officers to wait in the driveway while we get the generator started." I don't look at the guests. I don't look at the expensive jewelry or the terrified expressions of the local elite. I look straight at Officer Miller and point a single, steady finger at the man who gave me life and then tried to liquidate my soul. "That man," I say. My voice carries through the cavernous room, bouncing off the marble and the high ceilings. And that woman in the silk wrap near the piano, they are the trespassers. They have no legal right to be on this property. They have broken into a private residence and are currently hosting an unauthorized gathering. I want them removed. Now. The silence that follows is thick enough to choke on. I watch the color drain from Beatrice's face. She looks like a wax figure melting under a heat lamp. Her mouth hangs open, a small, dark O of disbelief. The friends she was trying to impress, the people she wanted to rule over with my money, are already shrinking away. They are shuffling toward the coat closet, their eyes fixed on the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Officer Miller says, his voice a thunderclap in the quiet. "This is a private residence. The owner has requested your immediate departure. Please leave your drinks and exit through the front door immediately. Failure to comply will result in arrest." It is a stampede of silk and wool. I stand like a statue in the center of the room as the Hendersons and the Gables scurry past me. They won't look at me, they won't look at Marcus. The social fortress my parents tried to build hasn't just crumbled, it has been vaporized. Beatrice snaps. She lunges toward me, her face contorting into a mask of pure, jagged hatred. She looks like a different person. The polished veneer of the country club wife has been stripped away, leaving only the predator underneath. "You monster!" she screams. The sound is raw, a guttural howl that echoes in the empty hallway. "We gave you everything, you would be nothing without us. You're a cold, heartless monster, Larkin. How could you do this to your own blood?" Miller steps between us with the practiced grace of a man who has seen 1,000 family tragedies. He doesn't draw a weapon, he doesn't have to. He simply puts a firm, gloved hand on her arm. "Ma'am, that's enough," he says. "Let's go." Beatrice is shaking. She is vibrating with a rage so intense I can almost feel the heat from it. Her heels, Grandma's vintage Ferragamos that she must have scavenged from the back of the master closet, click frantically on the marble floor as she is led away. Clack, clack, clack. It's a desperate, losing rhythm. She tries to pull her arm back, her silk wrap slipping from her shoulders and falling into a heap on the floor, but Miller's grip is iron. Marcus is silent now. That is the most satisfying part. The man who always had an answer, always had a lecture, always had a way to make me feel small, has run out of words. He looks old. He looks diminished. He looks like the debt-ridden failure he spent 30 years trying to hide from the world. As he's guided toward the door, he stops for one heartbeat. He looks at me, not with anger but with a sudden, terrifying realization. He finally sees me. He doesn't see a daughter or a resource or a safety net. He sees the person who just closed his account for good. He sees the woman who just became the landlord of his life. The heavy front door shuts with a final, echoing thud. The blue and red lights continue to pulse against the walls for a few more seconds, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. Then I hear the engines start. I hear the crunch of gravel as the squad cars pull away. I hear the silence return to Grandma Rose's house. I am alone in the dark. The scent of the party, the truffle oil, the expensive gin, the sweat of desperate social climbers lingers like a stain. I walk over to the window and watch the red tail lights disappear down the long, winding driveway. I reach out and touch the silk runner on the table. It's cold. I am Larkin Vance. I am the owner of this house, the guardian of this legacy, and the author of my own story. The ledger is finally balanced. And for the first time in my life, I don't owe anyone a single cent. I'm Larkin Vance, 29, and I just watched the police drag my parents out of the house they thought they had stolen from me. The silence that follows the departure of the police is heavy. It isn't the peaceful silence of a library or a sleeping forest. It is the thick, suffocating silence of a battlefield after the cannons have stopped firing. I stand in the center of the foyer, my breath hitching in my chest. The air in the house is ruined. It smells of stale wine, expensive perfume that doesn't belong here, and the sharp, metallic tang of betrayal. I look down at my feet. I am barefoot. I stepped on a discarded cocktail pick earlier, and a small, dark bead of blood is blooming on the arch of my foot. I don't feel the pain. I only feel the cold marble and the weight of the night pressing against the windows. I walk into the living room. It is a graveyard of a party I never authorized. There are half-empty crystal glasses perched on the edges of Grandma Rose's antique side tables, leaving white, stinging rings on the polished wood. A silk scarf is draped over the arm of a velvet chair like a shed skin. I pick up a glass of red wine that has been knocked over onto the Persian rug. The liquid has soaked into the fibers, a deep, bruised purple stain that looks like a wound. I don't cry. I don't have any tears left for them. The front door chimes. It is a low, discreet hum. I check the monitor. It's Elias, the locksmith I called 3 hours ago when the police were still taking statements. He is a tall, shadow-like man carrying a heavy steel toolbox. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't look at the disarray of the house or the way my hands are shaking as I lead him to the first entry point. Everything, I say, my voice sounds like it's coming from a long way off. I want every single lock replaced, every window sensor, every gate code. I want the entire system purged. Elias nods once. Biometrics? Yes, I reply. I want it so that no one can enter this house without my physical presence. The work begins. The sound of the power drill is a serrated scream in the quiet house. Whir, snap, clack. Every time a lock cylinder hits the floor, I feel a tiny piece of the tension in my shoulders dissolve. He starts with the heavy oak front door. I watch him strip away the old brass hardware, the hardware my father had the audacity to try and change his first day here. I follow Elias from room to room. I am a ghost haunting my own recovery. We move to the terrace doors, then the servants' entrance, then the heavy steel door to the basement. With every new installation, I feel the perimeter of my life shrinking back to a size I can control. While he works on the kitchen garden door, I sit on the floor and open my laptop. The security interface is a grid of cold blue light. I navigate to the User Management tab. My heart hammers against my ribs. There they are. Marcus Vance Master Access. Beatrice Vance Master Access. They had already gone into the system. They had already renamed themselves the owners of my inheritance. Seeing their names in the digital ledger feels like seeing maggots on a fresh loaf of bread. My finger hovers over the trackpad. I am trembling. This is the moment I erase the last tether. This is the moment I tell the universe that family is a privilege, not a right. I click Marcus's name. A prompt appears. Are you sure you want to permanently delete this user and all associated biometric data? Yes, I whisper to the empty kitchen. I click the button. His name vanishes. I do the same for Beatrice. I delete the guest codes they generated for their friends. I purge the thumbprints they must have scanned into the keypad while I was sleeping. I watch the progress bar crawl across the screen. Deleting, deleting, purge complete. I feel a sudden, violent surge of nausea. I lean my head against the cool granite of the kitchen island and breathe. I think about the $1.9 million Grandma Rose left me. To my parents, that money was a windfall. It was a way to pay off their gambling debts and buy back the status they had squandered. To them, it was a trophy. To me, it was a wall. Elias finished the final lock on the master suite an hour before dawn. He leads me back to the front foyer. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the sky is turning a bruised, watery gray. He hands me a small, black tablet. "Place your thumb here, Ms. Vance," he says. I press my thumb to the glass. A thin line of green light sweeps across my skin. It feels like a brand. "Now your right eye," he instructs. I lean in. The camera chirps. "The system is now locked to your unique signature," Elias says, packing his tools. If anyone attempts to enter a code or force a handle, the silent alarm goes straight to the private security firm. Not the police, the firm. "They'll be here in 3 minutes. I pay him. I tip him more than the entire job cost. I want him to remember this night as a win, even if I remember it as a funeral. After he leaves, I walk to the front door. I reach out and touch the new matte black handle. It is cold. It is unyielding. I pull it shut. Thud. The sound echoes through the 3-story foyer, bouncing off the marble and the high, vaulted ceilings. I stand there in the dark, my back against the door. The house is finally silent. The smell of the party is still there, but it's fading, replaced by the scent of the rain starting to fall outside. I realize then that the $1.9 million isn't the fortune. The house isn't the prize. The ability to stand in this dark hallway and know that no one, not the people who raised me, not the people who share my blood, not the people who tried to break me, can get past that door without my permission. That is the real wealth. The real fortune is the power to say no and have the world actually listen. I walk to the window and watch the rain wash the tire tracks of the police cars off the driveway. I am Larkin Vance. I am alone. And for the first time in 29 years, I am perfectly, beautifully safe. I'm Larkin Vance, 29, and I've finally learned that $1.9 million buys a lot of things. But the most expensive item on the list is silence. I am sitting in my new sanctuary, 30 floors above the noise of the world. The floor-to-ceiling windows of my high-security condo offer a panoramic view of the city skyline, a grid of flickering lights that look like diamonds scattered on velvet. Behind me, the heavy steel door is locked with a biometric scanner that only recognizes my thumbprint and my iris. There are no spare keys. There are no back doors. There are no parents waiting in the shadows to demand a piece of my soul. The air in here is filtered and cool. It doesn't smell like the stale gin and desperation that lingered in Grandma Rose's house after the police took Marcus and Beatrice away. It smells like nothing. It smells like a blank page. I sit at my minimalist glass desk, the glow of my laptop screen reflecting in my eyes. My hands are perfectly steady. For 10 years, my hands shook whenever my phone buzzed. For a decade, my heart would stutter at the sound of a notification, wondering if it was a demand for money or a guilt trip wrapped in a "we miss you" text. Not tonight. I open a new email draft. I type their names into the recipient line for the very last time. My chest feels light, as if gravity has forgotten to pull on me. I attach 3 files. The first is an itemized invoice. I spent 3 days meticulously calculating the damage they left behind. I didn't hold back. I included the $4,200 for the professional forensic cleaning service I hired to scrub the scent of their party out of Grandma's floorboards. I included the $14,000 quote for the replacement of the 19th century Persian rug they ruined with their spilled Bordeaux. I included the bill for the locksmith, the private security fees, and even the cost of the discarded cocktail shrimp I had to have hauled away. The total at the bottom is staggering. It is a number they will never be able to pay. It is a reminder of their failure, written in black and white. The second attachment is the no trespass order I filed with the county. It is a legal boundary, a sharp-edged promise that if they ever step foot on any property I own, they won't just be escorted out, they will be arrested on sight. I read the words permanent restraint over and over. It is the most beautiful poetry I have ever read. The third attachment is a copy of the final audit from Grandma's estate. I want them to see the numbers. I want them to see exactly how much they lost because they couldn't stop being vultures for 5 minutes. I don't write a long, emotional message. I don't give them the satisfaction of my anger or my hurt. I am done being their victim and I am done being their audience. I type one sentence, the ledger is closed. I hover the cursor over the send button. I take a deep breath. I can feel the pulse in my neck, slow and rhythmic. I click. The message sent notification pops up and then vanishes. Immediately, I navigate to my contacts. I find mother and father. I don't hesitate. I click the small I next to their names. I scroll to the bottom of the screen. Block this caller. The prompt appears, you will not receive phone calls, messages, or FaceTime from people on the block list. Good, I whisper. I tap the screen. A physical sensation washes over me, starting at the crown of my head and rushing down to my toes. It is a literal shedding of weight. It is the feeling of a heavy, wet wool coat being lifted off my shoulders after a lifetime of walking in the rain. I have carried the burden of their expectations, their debts, and their cruelty since I was 19 years old. I have been the responsible one, the safety net, the disappointment who wouldn't just give them what they wanted. That girl is gone. I stand up and walk to the window. I pick up my cup of Earl Grey tea. The steam rises in a delicate curl, warming my face. I look out at the city. Somewhere down there in a cramped apartment or a cheap motel, Marcus and Beatrice are probably staring at their phones, waiting for a way back in. They are waiting for the daughter they think they can break. They will be waiting forever. I sip my tea. It is perfectly bitter and perfectly hot. I think about Grandma Rose. I think about the way she looked at me when I was a little girl, telling me that I had a spine made of iron. I didn't believe her then. I spent so many years feeling like glass, ready to shatter at the slightest pressure. But glass doesn't survive what I just went through. Glass doesn't evict its own blood. Only iron does that. I watch a plane fly low over the horizon, its lights blinking against the dark sky. It's heading somewhere far away. I feel a smile tug at the corners of my mouth, a real, genuine smile that reaches my eyes. I am Larkin Vance. I am 29 years old. I have $1.9 million in the bank, a fortress of a home, and a future that belongs entirely to me. The silence in the room is no longer heavy. It is a symphony. I turn off the lights, letting the glow of the city fill the space, and for the first time in my life, I lay down to sleep knowing that no one is coming to take anything from me. I am finally permanently free.